AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, the Matt McNeil Show. Matt and Patrick here today. Patrick, no Buxton, no Polanco still, man.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, well, no, you know as well as I do, man. They got to start playing at some point here. We're 2 weeks away from the season. Do you think that there's something seriously wrong with both of them?
I don't know. I haven't heard anything. Obviously, the Twins, they probably don't want to say much, but I guess I'm just kind of over it.
Well, there's an MLB story that says they're on track. I'm like, on track? Don't you want to? They want to. I think you would want them to play a little bit before the season begins. I'm just saying. Anyway, it is what it is, man. It is what it is. We're just so used to Buxton not being playing, so I guess that's the case. Polanco is a concern because Jorge Polanco is actually a really good player, So that does concern me. By the way, we got a stellar show for you. Not only do we have Brett chatting with Cooligan coming up here a little bit later on in his usual Tuesday spot, but Kate Willett's going to join us. This is the comedian. She's done, Colbert. She's done Comedy Central, Netflix. She's done a few things. She has also got this great podcast, which I'll talk to her about. Very liberal, folks. I mean, very liberal. We'll talk to her about the podcast comedy and her career. That's coming up here closer to about 4:05 or so right now. But I got bad news for you. You and I were just talking about going to the top of the hill in Duluth anyway, right?
We were. Well, we're not going there now.
Not going to the Miller Hills Mall, man. Well, unless they're putting in some new sunlights. If you do have an opportunity here. A large portion of the Miller Hill Mall's roof collapsed on Tuesday morning, leading to an evacuation of the 50-year-old shopping center. Barnes & Noble manager Scott Scarr says he was opening the store around 9 a.m. when he heard a large noise like something rolling across the roof. He saw on the mall concourse snow had fallen in at a depth that reached to the roof. He's shocked to see the open sky, but, let's face it. It brightened the place up. We're not going to deny it.
No, if you've ever been in there, it is 50 years old.
Those northern malls, because they have the one that's over in Virginia as well, they're built like Canadian malls out in Saskatchewan, where all they are just concrete blocks. It's basically designed to survive winter storms. So, although, I have to admit, I'm a little surprised here. Wouldn't you think as well as I would that part of the maintenance of this mall would be to get up on the roof and clear snow off at some point?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too when I had seen this, especially when they said the depth of the snow pretty much went up to the ceiling after the cave-in, and I'm like, wow.
I don't know if you've got a maintenance crew with a shovel or something, but send them up there. No injuries reported. That's the good news. Said a spokesperson for the city of Duluth, but water and gas lines have been turned off. The scent of gas was in the air. Well, it is Duluth. Sorry. I'm glad they're being safe. The collapse appears to affect at least 5 businesses inside the mall, including not the Applebee's. How are we going to feel good in the neighborhood now, man? Express, not the Express store, and a Caribou Coffee kiosk. The Caribou Coffee kiosk has got to be completely buried at this point.
If you like iced coffee,
there you go. Nicely done. Nothing I find. Okay, can I just, on a quick side note, what is wrong with you people? It's Minnesota in winter. Why are you having iced coffee? Stop it. It's unnatural. Okay. Essential Health, which has several facilities in the mall, said it will close the mall for the day, even though they weren't affected. The Duluth Fire Department was asking people to stay away from the scene. Or you could create a nice little slide. If you really want to bring people into the mall, tell the kids to bring the sleds on out. Right down you go. And you set up the lane pretty good. You might be able to go get some of those chicken fingers at Applebee's, man. They're kind of tasty. Have you ever had the chicken salad? Very tasty.
I have not.
I would highly not recommend. Never mind. They're not sponsors. I'm not exactly impressed with the menu selection. The 800,000 square foot mall has more than 100 stores in it. At this point, the It's owned by the Simon Property Group, and like I said, it's an opportunity to put some sunroofs and some skylights in there, and brighten the place up. Yeah, I first saw this story, and the first thing that crossed my mind, very first thing that crossed my mind was that indeed this was someone screwed up the maintenance staff. They should have gone up there with a shovel and cleared off the snow, especially when it gets this big. Because and that's the problem. I mean, most of our houses have a pitched roof, so the kind of snow, the pressure doesn't fall right in the center. But any building that's got a flat roof on it, you better be getting up there and clearing that off. And especially after the snow you had this weekend, I'm surprised that someone hadn't gone up there and started clearing that off. But I guess now I guarantee you they'll have a policy now on that afterwards. So 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. I did want to talk a little bit about, there are a few different stories out there we're going to get to here. But one of them that I found to be very interesting, because it's playing out a little bit like a soap opera, if you want the truth. Less than a week after it was revealed she had made false statements to the city council about a taxpayer-funded Black Expo, Minneapolis's top race and equity official is out. The city's auditor's office is opening a probe into the event. Taistia Green, I believe is how you say it. Taistia Green, who was hired a year ago to head what became the Department of Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, served her final day as a city employee on Monday, city spokeswoman Sarah McKenzie had said. A flurry of developments, Green's sudden departure, and the launch of a multi-stage probe by the auditor's office highlighted the intense scrutiny Green and the February 25th event had come under. On Thursday, the Star Tribune had reported that Green falsely had told the city council that the Bush Foundation had been prepared to donate $3 million for the event. And the fact the city had never formally applied for any money from the St. Paul-based foundation, according to the Bush Foundation, and a subsequent statement from the city. Now, I'm going to just say this as a person who works with nonprofits. Yeah, I guarantee you, if someone had pledged $3 million, that there would have been press releases, there would have been a big ceremony. A lot of times organizations will donate like $20,000, $50,000. And even if you get to like $50,000, you usually have a big event to say thank you for it. The fact that this group, or the allegation was this group had donated $3 million, and there hadn't been any kind of press release or anything like that, that should have been a massive red flag right there. And it's to a point, it kind of sounds like that's exactly what happened, is because once she made the allegation, that basically immediately people's like, wait a minute here, someone had pledged $3 million for an event. Who is this? Where is this? And I think that kind of was, but the amount stated in this statement, and frankly, if I can be honest, this lie about the event, because it'd be one thing if there at least was a paper trail here that you had applied for this, or there was a conversation. There wasn't even an application. You just sort of someone, and I'm not saying maybe there was a miscommunication, but clearly if you're in charge of an organization or an event like this, you've got to know the process for applying for funds for charitable donations to help with events like this. And it's never just over the phone saying, hey, let's spit in our hands and shake hands and $3 million. I mean, no one's going to do that. That just is not an option. So I think it was a lie. I think that's kind of clear, but it was kind of such a foolish one that, I mean, because if you say an amount like that, of course someone in this town is going to follow up with the Bush Foundation and say, well, what happened to the $3 million? You guys are going to do this and you've been quiet about it? In response to the Star Tribune, Green said, I put in my resignation February 21st for several reasons. And in communications with other city officials that she provided, Green stands by what she told the city council when she said the Bush Foundation was prepared to donate $3 million, but she declined to provide details. Like I said, once again, if they were really going to donate $3 million, they would have had a press conference. There would have been a meeting. There would have been a big check there would have been dignitaries, because I mean, that's stuff like that just doesn't happen without public acknowledgement. Because let's face it, I mean, regardless if any organization gave a an event, a charitable group, anything like that, $3 million, there would be press about it. So I'm going to just presume that Green had misunderstood something, but you are the head of this organization. You kind of know how the process works here. And no one's going to donate $3 million to another to an event without there being a really big public bum about it. I mean, seriously. I was just at the Guthrie. And you got the people, Guthrie, the Minnesota Zoo, Science Museum. You got these organizations where you make a donation and they will list you in the program. They'll list you on a wall. There'll be a plaque. And if you think about those, most of those are what, like 5,000, 10,000, 25,000, 50,000. The super duper group is like 100,000. Maybe there's one or two people where, if it's like the zoo, the emu paddock is named after, say I had $3 million and I gave it to the Minnesota Zoo. You'd be going to the Matt McNeil emu paddock because, yeah, there you go. I love those emus. Oh, who doesn't love an emu? I love them so much. $3 million worth of emu love right there. But you kind of get the point there. It's like, most of these times, the people that they're kind of bending over backwards are making like $100,000 donation, like a $3 million donation. Their developments raised the number of questions surrounding the planning of the I Am My Ancestors' Wildest Dream Expo, which drew far fewer attendees than initially hoped and required a late influx of taxpayer money. For example, Green also told council members she had secured some $200,000 from organizations, perhaps local corporations. She suggested the city had to return that because she unknowingly violated the city's ethics code on how she solicited the donations. The same explanation she suggested for being unable to accept the non-existent $3 million from the Bush Foundation. The status of the purported 200 remains unclear. Green has never provided an explanation for the statement surrounding the Bush Foundation, at least not publicly. Green's comments to the full council came during a February 17th emergency meeting to plug a budget hole for the expo, the city's first African-American centered event since the 2020 murder of George Floyd, just over a week before it was about to be held. I bring this up, and like I said, I bring this up for this reason, is that this is, and I mean, we have, because of police brutality and shootings and stuff like this, we have a conveyor belt of taxpayer dollars out of the city of Minneapolis as it is already, on top of, football stadiums for billionaires and crap like that. And I don't know if you've looked around, but this is the worst freaking pothole season I've ever seen in this city. It is. I was over on Huron, over by the University of Minnesota campus. It was undrivable. The road was undrivable because it was just, a foot deep potholes, 40 of them in a row. Like you're driving through, France after the D-Day liberation. My God. And so this is going to be one of those things where my guess is going to be maybe she just wasn't qualified for the job, in the sense being is that someone that you put in charge of a job like this has to be very familiarized with fundraising, how you fundraise, how you apply for grants, who are the organizations that you apply for those grants and stuff like this. And you shouldn't have this, well, someone said we're going to have this. I mean, if you really did have these commitments on this money, you should have paperwork, email trails, notifications, letters, and stuff like this. And it just doesn't sound like any of that exists. And so, someone who seemed to have gotten in over their head and trying to put together what seems like a very good idea as far as an expo is now going to probably end up costing a few $100,000 of taxpayer money. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. We'll take a break. Come on back. I want to get into some other things as well. It's the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950.
Would you let animals pick your insurance? Do you really need to experience mayhem to get the best rates? Or how about a celebrity quarterback or fake university saving you money? There's a lot of marketing stunts when it comes to insurance, but what you really need is someone looking out for you. Call Array Insurance, and they will work hard to find you the best insurance coverage and rates. So avoid gimmicks and call Cheryl at Array, 763-504-3067, or arrayinsurance.com. Array Insurance, working hard for you.
The Electric Fetus is having a pre-inventory store-wide sale now through March 19th. Take 20% off almost everything in the store: new and used vinyl, CDs and DVDs, Electric Fetus t-shirts, hoodies, and pint glasses, and tons of other great gift ideas. The store is open 10 to 6 Tuesday through Saturday and 11 to 6 on Sunday. Electric Fetus is located just south of downtown Minneapolis at 2000 South 4th Avenue. More info at electricfetus.com. Sale ends Sunday.
Winter is here, and there's a good chance your home isn't being heated efficiently. And it's likely because of air sealing and insulation problems. Inadequate attic insulation is the leading contributor to high energy bills, cold rooms, and ice dams. Great news, the energy-efficient pros at Snap Construction can fix it all. Stop the heat from leaking out and save. Call 612-333-SNAP or visit snapconstruction.com for your free infrared energy inspection. Install with Snap Construction and qualify for over $750 in rebates and incentives. State and city programs are now offering 0% financing for qualifying insulation upgrades. So call Snap Construction for your free insulation energy consultation and start saving on your energy bills. Call 612-333-SNAP. That's 612-333-SNAP. Or visit snapconstruction.com. Snap Construction is arguably the most well-reviewed insulation and exterior contractor in the metro area. Visit snapconstruction.com.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It is the Matt McNeil Show. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205 is the phone number. Coming up here at 4:05, Kate Willett's going to join us, a comedian with a great podcast. We'll get to that. Since I am bringing up, crime stories here, or, well, at least, okay, once again, I'll give Green the benefit of the doubt that she misunderstood something, and she kind of got in over her head. She didn't know what she was doing in regards to the fundraising of this element. So I won't necessarily call it necessarily a criminal or stuff. But I will say it's we're going to be paying for that one. Let me also bring up the story that was a big one yesterday. 10 more people indicted Monday for misappropriating and laundering money they got through the federal child nutrition program. Prosecutors say was bilked out more than $250 million, primarily in Minnesota. This brings the total number of people indicted to 60. So far, 6 people have already pled guilty. The feds have seized $66.6 million in bank accounts, real estate, and other property, including $4 million worth of vehicles. U.S. Attorney Andy Luger said the money was spent on fancy cars, from Teslas to BMWs to luxury resort vacations, and even a deposit on an airplane. One even laundered money by purchasing a laundromat, Luger said. The song of Feeding Our Future scandal remains the same, Luger said during a press conference. Just like the first 50 people indicted, the defendants were charged with falsely claiming they fed thousands of needy children daily, generating fake invoices to make it appear they were buying large amounts of food but spending much of the money on themselves. They were charged with conspiracy, wire fraud, money laundering, and bribery, and the investigation isn't over. Among those charges, a prominent woman in the Bloomington area, Ayan Farah Abukar, 41, who is lauded as an outstanding refugee in a 2021 by the State Department of Human Services. Abukar founded Action for East African People, which she enrolled in the federal child nutrition program under the sponsorship of Feeding Our Future and another unnamed company. She's charged with falsely claiming to serve up to 5,000 children a day at sites in Bloomington, Minneapolis, Savage, and St. Paul from October 2020 through 2022. Abukar is charged with fraudulently receiving about $5.7 million in federal funds, paying over $330,000 in kickbacks to Feeding Our Future employees, and spending millions on real estate, including a 37-acre commercial property in Lakeville. She's accused of using the money to deposit $250,000 towards the purchase of an aircraft to be delivered to Kenya. Lugar said that among the most brazen schemes she's seen is that of Kassar Jamar, 41 of Egan, who claimed to be feeding 2,560 meals a day to needy people in Pelican Rapids. The entire population of Pelican Rapids is 2,500. Lugar said, and by the way, can I bring up the point yesterday? I talked about the banking thing. And I'm going to bring these two things together because greed is universal. And it doesn't matter whether it's people taking advantage of a program with a good heart, which is set to feed hungry people, to basically steal money from the federal government. Or it's basically people who lobby the federal government to deregulate their industry so that they can immediately start taking advantage of their customers and basically torpedoing their bank. And I know there's a lot of people in that, and if I can touch really quick on the banking story, I've been reading a lot today about, wow, they were just caught off guard. They put a lot of money in bonds. They're a bank. They from everything I have seen here, there's a huge question of where their money went. And no one is so linearly invested to where all they had was government bonds, which basically went down in value because of inflation. No one has. My gut feeling is we're going to find out the Silicon Valley Bank, that bank, which is going to find out that those executives basically were at best gambling on investments in a Las Vegas kind of mentality. I mean, how much did they have in crypto? And stuff like this. And my gut feeling is they probably saw where this was all going a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I'd be very questioning about where a lot of that money went. Because the mentality is, sure, I'll go to jail on white collar crime charges of stealing millions of dollars, maybe even billions of dollars, and come back out in 2 years and go live on some tropical island that you'll never find me again with no extradition, that sort of thing. But the reality is greed knows no bounds, and it's not something that's unique to the wealthy white community or the clearly in this case, this immigrant community, which basically people were looking at as free there. And once again, I will say this: the feeding our future people definitely seem like the criminal conspiracy should begin with them, because they seem to coordinate this whole thing where where's our kickbacks like it's some sort of 1940s mafia movie, for God's sakes. Hey, be a shame if something happened to your organization here, like a fire or something. You need to pay us money so everything goes well. I mean, God, the whole thing is just unbelievable. And then you get this. I mean, and here's where you get the brazenness. In the case of the banking industry, they destroy their bank. In the case of this, I mean, the person is actually, this Kassar Jama of Egan apparently never once pulled up the population of Pelican Rapids, which they insisted, he was claiming to, feed 2,500 people a day when the entire population of the town is 2,500 people. Lugar said the names of the children she claimed to be feeding did not match school records, and she reached out to a friend to help invent names. So brazen Jama did not go into trouble of renting a fake food distribution site, as most of the defendants did, but forged a phony lease instead. She's charged with submitting $3.7 million in fraudulent claims in federal funds, some of which she spent on living expenses, real estate, vehicles, including a Tesla and an Infiniti. Jesus. And by the way, can I just say this? If you're ripping off hungry kids so you can go get a sports car, you suck. Can I just say you suck? You're a horrible person. Just really. Many of the other people here also, being charged. They're building cases against other people. They're going to get all the people here. And at this point, and I want to say this, as much as Republicans desperately wanted to say, see, the Democrats failed. The reality is I've gone back and I looked a lot at that court ruling that basically hogtied the Attorney General's office and the oversight from the Department of Education on this. It clearly was, don't you dare try to question them. And almost immediately, by the way, those two organizations went to the federal government saying, go get them, because they knew that the local judge was basically preventing them from being able to investigate properly. It's ugly. Oh, speaking of which, when I come on back, I got, God, just the depth of the Minneapolis Police Department and their just it's like peeling an onion. It just never ends. It gets uglier and uglier as you get deeper. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. It's the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950.
Hey, it's Tom. Many local utility companies and cities have recently renewed incentives for installing solar panels in 2023. This is great news for people looking to go solar, but the electrical grid can only handle so many systems being added to their current infrastructure. The electrical grid has limited space for connecting solar energy systems, so it's important to secure your place on the grid and go solar before someone else takes your spot. All Energy Solar is hosting a winter webinar where you can learn more about local solar incentives and electrical grid congestion. These webinars are free and open to the public, no matter if your property is residential, commercial, agriculture, or even something else. And during your webinar, an expert from All Energy Solar will be available to answer all of your questions. If you're someone who has thought about going solar but are unsure if it's right for you, these webinars are a perfect way to learn more. Interested in attending? Visit allenergysolar.com/webinar to register for an event and see what incentives are available to you.
Hi, I'm Rachel Shamblat. My dad is Dr. Scott Shamblat from Shamblat Family Dentistry. A lot of people are afraid of the dentist, but you don't have to be. My dad makes going to the dentist comfortable and even fun. He won't be mad if you haven't seen a dentist in a long time. He just wants to take care of you and your teeth. If you don't see my dad, please see another dentist. Take care of your teeth because they're the only ones you get.
Shamblat Family Dentistry in Hopkins and St. Paul. Find them online at shamblatfamilydentistry.com or call 1-800-FIX-MY-TEETH.
Cafe Latte offers made-from-scratch soups, salads, sandwiches, and mouth-watering desserts. So come check out their pizza and wine bar, or get a treat from the bakery made fresh daily. Plus, you can still do online ordering and takeout, along with gift cards. Just go to cafelatte.com and choose from their ever-changing selection of award-winning salads, sandwiches, and soups. Cafe Latte is located off Victoria and Grand and online at cafelatte.com.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for sunny skies today with a high near 32, tonight clear with a low around 26, and Wednesday partly sunny with a high around 42. The Great Wall Restaurant in Edina provides an extensive Chinese menu with an emphasis on Szechuan and Mandarin cuisine. Some of the favorites include the sesame chicken, cream cheese wonton, and Szechuan duck with walnuts. Located just north of 50th and France on the Edina-Minneapolis border, dine in or order takeout at greatwalledina.com.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. By the way, Raising One Brow's got a great idea. Oh, this is a great idea. The Miller Hill Mall should have a rooftop Zamboni. Now, okay, let's have a Minnesota conversation here. Well, if you're looking to remove your snow, you don't want a Zamboni. That's going to sheet it over, and I'm not sure exactly if that's going to get your weight thresholds doing well there with the Minnesota winter. Now, what you really want is maybe some sort of ornate, decorated, Zamboni-esque snow thrower. Now, that would be good. Now, my guess is going to be you'll have to throw it off one side of the mall. So, you might want to limit parking there, at least get the handicap spots away from the side of the building. That being said, yeah. Have you ever been to a restaurant where they've had like the electric train going through? And even if you're an adult, you're like, there goes the train, right?
Oh, yeah.
Black Forest Inn up in Duluth has one, right? I believe Black Forest Inn has one up there.
I'm not sure, but I know a couple Broadway pizzas do.
That's right. That's right. Well, think about that. You got on top of this, you got like a Zamboni snow thrower. People would just come out and park in your mall parking lot just to watch the Zamboni thing going back and forth in a snowstorm.
Right?
Oh my God. That's thinking. That's thinking. You could change up you could paint the one side of it with like Wurzel's pretzels or something like that when it's whatever the store du jour of the day is. Oh, that's a great idea. Oh, there you go. Duluth, you're welcome. And maybe I might have time a little bit later on to get to that great story That was in the New York Times. I was very flattering story of Duluth. And so, yeah, we can maybe talk about that a little bit later on, but let's not talk flattering stories, at least not with Minneapolis Police Department. Now, I know Brett and Patrick Hooligan are going to talk about this a little bit coming up here in a little bit as well, but my God. Okay. This is from the Reformer. 4 months after Derek Chauvin pressed his knee into George Floyd's neck, suffocating him in the pavement outside of Cup Foods on 38th in Chicago in the streets of Minneapolis, Jacqueline Billick called the Minneapolis Police Department about a man who was putting flyers on windshields and condemning Black Lives Matter. Billick called the 5th Precinct Police Station to see if it was this man was dangerous because she'd heard he was having some mental health problems. Sergeant Scott Kaiser, that's not a red flag at all, answered the phone. After hearing her story, Kaiser launched into his own diatribe about the activist group, Billick said, calling Black Lives Matter a terrorist group that will wipe us off the face of the earth. Excuse me, Billick replied. He repeated himself. She said she didn't think it was appropriate and asked to speak to a supervisor. He laughed, she said, refused to transfer her or take down her contact information. And then, and by the way, can I just, once again, this is in the months after George Floyd, where these same police departments were like, we're going to work together with the people of the community. Remember that? I remember that. Same police department that had a racist Christmas tree. Maybe not the same precinct, but same police department. Same police department that went out hunting the citizens of Minneapolis in the days after George Floyd, hunting them, and tried to bag Stallings there in South Minneapolis. Unbelievable. Once again, she said she didn't think it was appropriate to be asked to speak to a supervisor. He laughed, she said, and refused to transfer her or take down her contact information. And then with all due arrogance, he goes, you know what? I've got the feeling you are going to file a complaint, so let me spell my last name so you get it correctly and give you my badge number so nothing's wrong, Billick said. She called back later, but Kaiser answered again and wouldn't transfer the call, she said. Billick was stunned. He was brazenly threatening a good portion of the people he serves as a police officer. He's an arrogant SOB, pardon my language. I'm 72 and usually very low key, Billick says. He knew he wasn't going to be held accountable, and he thought it was funny. It was just a game. And once again, isn't that the theme of this police department? They can be racist, they can be bigots, they can mistreat the people of this city, and then they know and they don't care because they know they'll never be held accountable. And proof positive of that, to my knowledge, not one single officer has been held accountable for what they did to Stallings 4 days after George Floyd. Not a single officer. Even though there was a cornucopia, an old country buffet of crap police work displayed on their own cameras. And that godforsaken police department doesn't once hold any of those cowards I call them, accountable. Not a single one of them. But, you know, the people of the city don't give us enough of a chance. Really? 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 She did file a complaint, ended up talking to Inspector Amelia Huffman, who was a deputy chief in charge of internal affairs at the time. Huffman was named interim police chief in February of 2021. Billick told Huffman what happened and gave her Kaiser's name. She started to give his badge number when, according to Billick, Huffman said, you don't have to give me the badge number. We know who he is, who this is. She wasn't dismissing it, Billick said. It was like no news to her, and he would do this. She certainly knew about the history. Huffman told Billick an investigator would call her to set up a formal interview. Someone called, but then canceled soon afterwards. For months, Billick heard nothing. The retired business owner took meticulous notes about the conversation with Kaiser and everyone thereafter, and even some of them notarized. Despite Billick's repeated phone calls, the city took 7 months to interview her. Really crack staff over there, guys. By then, the world was waiting to hear the verdict of the Chauvin's murder trial in April of 2021. Billick was at City Hall near the courthouse being interviewed about her complaint against Kaiser. Downtown Minneapolis was packed with people. Reporters were everywhere. Billick said one of the officers involved in her case suggested Billick tell her story to one of the national reporters outside, saying, "Your story needs to go national." The prospect of stirring the already boiling pot over pot scared Billick. She opted to proceed with her complaint and let the city's disciplinary process play out. For months, she heard nothing, so she started calling City Hall again. Nick Barkley, an investigator for the city's Office of Police Conduct Review, which handles misconduct complaints against officers, recently told Billick that the investigation had concluded, but nothing else. Great. So is there an apology? Has this person been fired? In an email to Billick, Barkley wrote that he sympathized with her about the lack of information he could disclose to her, because Lord knows right now the most important people we have to protect in this city is the image of these police officers. Please. I hear your frustration, and I hope it was made clear that we as staff share many of the same frustrations regarding case status, investigating conclusions, and another that is considered private. Public records do not indicate Kaiser has been disciplined, which means MPD's notoriously slow disciplinary process is still ongoing 2.5 years after Billick made her report, or that Kaiser was granted coaching instead of discipline. Yeah, coach his ass out of the state. How about we do that? Minneapolis Police Department introduced coaching more than a decade ago, and it doesn't consider it a discipline because it isn't. Let's just be honest. It isn't. It isn't. Coaching isn't discipline. Coaching is just lip service. That's all it is. It's all it is. Complaints that result in coaching aren't disclosed to the public. That secrecy is currently the subject of a lawsuit against the city by Minnesota Coalition of Government Information. Billick's story illustrates many of the ways in which MPD has struggled to discipline officers. She encountered delays and opacity, and the public is none the wiser. The MPD declined to make Kaiser, Huffman, or anyone available for comment, referring to their former to the police records office, because cowards. Let's just call it. Oh, it's like whenever there's a crime, and they are rushing out with their body cam footage, because at that point their story matches the video footage. So then all of a sudden, there's no concern about the privacy of the individuals or the citizens. There's no concern about, well, we got to make sure that the suspect here's their privacy is maintained. They get it out there right away. No concerns about privacy. But all of a sudden, that video footage doesn't match the story they're trying to push forward, like in the Stallings case. Suddenly, all of a sudden, we can't release this information. We've got privacy concerns. Why aren't you thinking about the police? And then finally, when it comes inevitable, they have to release this, comes the press conference. Okay. We're going to release this information. I just want to, before emotions get high, before tempers flare, I want to make sure we understand we're taking this seriously 2 years after the incident. We are going to get some level of, we don't want everyone upset. So because we legally have to, here is the footage, but don't take it out on us. Yeah, there's two sides to the coin there, isn't there? There's just two ways of doing something there. You god-awful police department. City records show 13 misconduct complaints have been filed against Kaiser. God, 13. That would be known as a jackass dozen right there. 13 misconduct complaints have been filed against Kaiser since 2012, including one case that's still open and two which he was disciplined. It doesn't appear he was disciplined for a lawsuit the city settled in which a Muslim woman said he unnecessarily searched her and made her a disparaging remark about her religion. Wow, that sounds on point. Habso Khalif, a Minneapolis woman, sued Kaiser and other officer. She said they unlawfully detained and frisked her with Kaiser touching her genital area and pulling up the back of her sweater. Yikes. According to her lawsuit, Khalif told Kaiser, You don't have to touch me like that. I'm Muslim. And this is how Kaiser reported, according to the plate. I don't care what religion you think you are. The city settled the lawsuit in March 2021 for $30,000. Kaiser has been, I guess maybe we should be happy. My God, only a 5-figure settlement? Wow. Let's have well, no, we can't afford a celebration. But let's think about having a celebration of a minor settlement here because of a police misconduct. Kaiser has been disciplined for 2 misconduct cases, but neither was connected to the Khalif lawsuit. He sent a letter of reprimand last fall while responding to an assault report. He told a citizen, "You got to take the blank out of your mouth so I can understand you." And then later told a paramedic at the scene, "You got weak leadership that won't stand up to," I'm going to say this. This is what he said. "Retard politicians is really what it is." Wow. As interim chief, Huffman wrote in a disciplinary memo, most of which is redacted, that Kaiser committed 2 instances for unprofessional language. How is this guy how is this guy in Minnesota? He's a disgrace. He's he's a horrible human being. Okay, let's just, the allegations against him and what he's already been disciplined for, what we've already paid $30,000 for. He's just human trash. This guy shouldn't be employed as a freaking Domino's delivery driver, let alone an officer with a badge and a gun. What kind of ass is this guy? And what kind of system do we have in place where such repeated and consistent behavior, as described here in the Reformer story, it does not lead to someone dragging this person to the border of the city by the nape of their freaking neck, ripping the badge off his chest, the gun off his waist, and throwing him out of the city? How is that even possible? Ugh. But hey, we got to make sure their privacy is protected, not like the woman that he grabbed the genitals of. No, there's no need for privacy there. Okay. Kaiser was suspended for 40 hours in July for an incident while responding to a disturbance call in September of 21. Kaiser said the man ended up scuffling on the ground, and when the man said he couldn't breathe, Kaiser said, "Good, you're a stupid piece of blank." Begins with an S. According to Huffman's discipline manual, the man continued to say he couldn't breathe, but the officers continued to leave him in the prone position without sitting him up to a recovery position because, maybe they need to have an example of, excessive police behavior to someone lying on the ground, which causes them to die for lack of air. At one point, the man asked, "What did I do?" Kaiser replied, "It's called 4th-degree assault. It's a felony blank hole. God, you're a blanking idiot. You're drunk. You're an idiot. You're stupid." God, this guy, thank God this is a law enforcement. This once again, allegations made in the story. Kaiser's a law enforcement officer. The man asked for mercy, to which Kaiser replied, "Oh, you want mercy? Go blank yourself, you drunk blank." The man was handcuffed after complaining of pain after being taken to the squad car. Kaiser said, "Oh, now you're a P word." Wow. Huffman found the complaint had merit due to profane and derogatory language used by Kaiser. Oh, well, man, he's got his body cam, right? Let's see the body cam footage. My guess is the reason why these are getting disciplined is they've got evidence which clearly shows that he did exactly everything that's being said. That would be my guess. Every officer should, Huffman wrote that after Floyd's death, every officer should understand the seriousness of any person expressing that they cannot breathe and respond with care. Oh, Billick is disappointed that Kaiser doesn't appear to have faced repercussions for what he said to her about Black Lives Matter. I don't understand how something like this, where he is disavowing protection of half the city, isn't a violation. That was pretty clear. In saying he wasn't alone. Billick came away from the experience saying of the police, although most are professional and respectful, she said she doesn't know which she can trust anymore. I'm just so appalled, and I don't trust the police. In addition to locking my door every way I could, I had chairs in front of my door against the doorknob. I want to make sure we understand something here. This woman is saying she's locking her door and putting a chair up against the door, a la like Ellie's mom in The Last of Us, this latest episode. Not for criminals. To stop the police. Wow. Eventually, she decided she wanted her story to be pulled, so she wrote letters to multiple news outlets. I'm white, I'm educated, I'm privileged, and I'm afraid of Minneapolis police, she wrote. Nobody published her letter to this day. Kaiser still works for the Minneapolis Police Department. Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. 952-946-6205. Let's take a break. Aaron, hold on. Your call after the break. It is the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950. Hi, Matt McNeil here. On December 8th, I was driving home in my Toyota Sienna from Rudy Luther Toyota. At a traffic light, a car slammed into me. Without a doubt in my mind, if I hadn't been driving a Sienna, I wouldn't be here right now. The car is designed to take a wallop and keep the people inside safe, as it did for me. It's one thing to hear someone talk about safety standards. It's another to become an example of the safety standards. The Toyota saved my life, and I will always own one. If you want real safety, visit Rudy Luther Toyota. Rudy Luther Toyota, the corner of 394 and 169 in Golden Valley.
Eat Local Minnesota is a great way to find locally owned Minnesota restaurants and food purveyors. You'll find high-quality food and unique eating experiences with dishes from around the world. Just visit eatlocalminnesota.com for your next meal. Crooner Supper Club invites you to Maggie's Lounge, an exciting new bar lounge. It's open Wednesdays through Sundays beginning at 4:30 for cocktails and light fare. And you don't need a ticket to enjoy the great atmosphere of Maggie's. So stop by Crooner Supper Club off Moore Lake and Highway 65 for dinner, drinks, and live music from both big-name local and national artists. Cafe Latte combines a cafe dining experience with gourmet quality food. Plus, you can still do online ordering and takeout along with gift cards. Just go to cafelatte.com and choose from their ever-changing selection of award-winning salads, sandwiches, and soups. Cafe Latte is located off Victoria and Grand and online at cafelatte.com.
Over 98% of people who experience sexual harassment or sexual assault in the workplace choose not to report it. Whether it's the fear of retaliation, belief that a bystander will report it, or worry about career advancement, at MJSB Employment Justice, we help employees take a stand. I'm Bree Johnson, partner at MJSB Employment Justice, a 50% women-owned law firm. If you feel unsure what to do following sexual harassment, we will be your voice to speak your truth.
Be heard. You deserve better. Contact us today for a free consultation at mjsbjustice.com.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. By the way, thank you very much to Todd Kolid for sponsoring AM 950 this week. He wants you to know about Lifeline Ukraine, a fantastic organization in Ukraine right now, offering mental health services and suicide prevention to the needy people of Ukraine. They need your help. If you can make a donation, please do. Lifeline Ukraine is the website. I got a link up on my social media pages. Please make the click, make a donation, help them out, as their need is incredibly great right now. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. Aaron is in Burnsville. He wanted to chime in. Welcome on in, Aaron.
Hi. Well, I work in downtown Minneapolis, and I wonder if this character, that's probably too friendly to call him. I use a stronger word, but you're regulated by the FCC, and I don't want to get anybody fined.
Thank you.
But let me say creep, okay? Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of great police officers. I work in downtown Minneapolis, and I know there's a lot of great officers there, but there's a lot of creeps, too. Case in point, yesterday, as a matter of fact, I'm walking through the Skyway. A gentleman came up to me and was asking me for some kind of money. I said, sorry, I don't have any, which really I don't carry cash anymore. I really didn't. And at the same time, a Minneapolis police officer's walking by. He's like, white supremacist and N-word. And I just turned around and I said, did you just say what I thought you said? And he stopped and looked at me like he was ready to tackle me and frisk me for saying that. So if you want respect, I don't care if you're a police officer or who you are. If you demand respect, which you should if you're a good police officer, if you're not a creep and you're obeying the law yourself and you're not a menace to society like this character is, I wonder if it was him. I didn't get his badge number.
Aaron, where can I ask you what building were you in, and about what time did this happen?
This was about 1:40, 1:45 in the afternoon. It was somewhere between. It was near IDS Crystal Court, heading back toward 9th and Marquette, where I work.
9th and Marquette. and once again, can you repeat what the police officer? So, man's trying to panhandle you. You say you don't have any money. Police officer walks by, and you say the police officer said what exactly again?
He said to me, he looked at both of us and said, as he's walking by, says, "Oh, N-word and white supremacist." Because what? I'm a middle-aged looking guy with a short haircut.
Wow. Holy God.
I thought this is a person who obviously hates his job. He's burned out, to say the least, and he hates humankind. I mean, after George Floyd, haven't these creeps learned anything? And why, whether it was this guy or not, is totally speculative on my part. But when I'm dialing through and I heard about this, I thought, my God, this sounds like the same guy.
Well, it does. It could be. I'm going to take Aaron. Thank you very much. I appreciate the phone call. And thank you very much for sharing the story. I might make a call or two and see if I can find out which officer was in that facility at that point yesterday. I'm going to take a guess. It wasn't. I'm going to be fair. There are a lot of good cops out there. I've said this before. I mean, I don't talk about pick the municipality, White Bear Lake, Maple Grove, Minnetonka, Burnsville, Newport. I don't talk about your police departments because you know why? This crap doesn't go on in your police departments. I rarely talk about the St. Paul Police Department, Duluth, Rochester, St. Cloud. I'm not saying there aren't some bad problems, but it's not on the consistency and at the level you see in Minneapolis. And part of me just wants to ask the question, what are you doing? I mean, what you are saying you're going to clean this up, and you still don't. I mean, this story that Aaron just said happened yesterday. The story that you have about, Johnny Sunshine here, Kaiser, basically, it sounds like this has been ongoing since 2012. You could clean this up tomorrow. And it just doesn't seem like it's a priority for you. And if, with the good officers that are in Minneapolis, which I still do believe the majority of you are good, how in the hell are you tolerating this pack of jackasses being the face of your department? How? You yourselves should be running them off the force. Dear Lord. Once again, it's an allegation. I'd love to find out if that was true, what Aaron said, because if that's where they're at, they're just out there using the N-word and calling everyone white supremacist, my God, then maybe it's too far gone. Hour 2, Kate Willett, it comes up next.
Tune in this Saturday morning right here on AM 950 for the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show from 7 to 8 a.m. We'll be discussing don't rush those plants in the ground quite yet, as well as compost for your garden. Our guest is houseplant guru Lisa Eldred Steinhoff, and we'll answer your garden questions. That's all this Saturday morning right here on AM 950 from 7 to 8 a.m. Tell a friend and let's grow together.
Hi, I'm Scott Peterson with the Minnesota News Network, inviting you to join us this week for Minnesota Matters, a news, entertainment, and sports show covering everything that matters in the North Star State. Tune us in right here or at your convenience at minnesotanewsnetwork.com.
Listen to Minnesota Matters every weekend, Sunday mornings at 6:30 on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Your radio station for the Resistance, the David Pakman Show, weekdays at 2 p.m. on AM 950 KTNF St. Louis Park, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
I'm Ed Donahue. The U.S. had to destroy a surveillance drone in the Black Sea after an encounter with Russian fighter jets. The AP's Sagar Magani has the story.
The Pentagon says 2 Russian jets flew near the MQ-9 drone for more than a half hour in international airspace.
They collided with the aircraft, damaging the propeller and essentially putting in a situation where it was unflyable and uncontrollable, so we brought it down.
Brigadier General Pat Ryder, even as Russia denied hitting the drone. It appeared to be the first time since the Cold War's height that a U.S. aircraft was brought down after being struck by a Russian warplane. The State Department's Ned Price says Washington was summoning Moscow's ambassador to lodge a protest about actions over international waters.
A brazen violation of international law.
National Security Council spokesman John Kirby says if Russia's aim was to keep the U.S. from flying in the area,
then that message will fail, because that is not going to happen.
Sagar Magani, Washington.
In California, more dangerous flooding is expected along the central coast, where a levee was breached as the Pajero River swelled with runoff from an atmospheric river. Andres Garcia lives nearby.
Because we live like 7 houses away from the river, and the water level says like 6 feet high, 7 probably. So we probably lost everything.
The state of Ohio is suing Norfolk Southern to make sure it pays for the cleanup and environmental damage caused by a fiery train derailment along the Ohio-Pennsylvania border last month. City supervisors in San Francisco are considering a proposal to become the first major U.S. city to fund reparations for slavery and systemic racism. The latest inflation gauge shows consumer prices are easing, but inflation is still at a high level. Stocks are higher at the closing bell on Wall Street. This is AP News.
Here's a message just for the attorneys out there. So you passed the bar, joined a firm, or even built your own. Now are you finding out that you're doing more administration than actual law practice? Lexicon can help. Lexicon is a legal technology provider with over a decade of experience streamlining administrative tasks like timekeeping, billing, and more, so you can focus on maximizing billable hours and increasing client satisfaction. Call 855-4-LEXICON or visit lexiconservices.com/go to learn more.
Be more CyberZen. Get NordVPN. With a few simple clicks, NordVPN will block online trackers, secure your devices from malware-infected downloads, and block access to malicious websites. With NordVPN, enjoy internet without trackers, without malicious websites, without malware-ridden files. Be more CyberZen. Catch the special deal now at nordvpn.com.
Turn to Auto Technical with your vehicle donation. We have families waiting for a car. You know, over 85% of unemployed are successful in finding and keeping a job if they have dependable transportation. A car plus a job equals a life changed. 612-919-5526. We have families waiting for a car. 919-5526 or autotech.org.
Would you let animals pick your insurance? Do you really need to experience mayhem to get the best rates? Or how about a celebrity quarterback or fake university saving you money? There's a lot of marketing stunts when it comes to insurance, but what you really need is someone looking out for you. Call Array Insurance, and they will work hard to find you the best insurance coverage and rates. To avoid gimmicks, and call Cheryl at Array, 763-504-3067, or arrayinsurance.com. Array Insurance, working hard for you.
Crooner's Supper Club invites you to enjoy drinks, a delicious dinner, and live music from both big-name local and national artists in a wide array of styles. Before or after your show, check out the new Maggie's Lounge, a perfect spot to visit with friends. It's open Wednesdays through Sundays beginning at 4:30 with cocktails and light fare. And you don't need a ticket to enjoy the great atmosphere of Maggie's. Crooner's Supper Club off Moore Lake and Highway 65. A little piece of old school nightlife in the 21st century.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for sunny skies today with a high near 32, tonight clear with a low around 26, and Wednesday partly sunny with a high around 42. The Great Wall Restaurant in Edina provides an extensive Chinese menu with an emphasis on Szechuan and Mandarin cuisine. Some of the favorites include the sesame chicken, cream cheese wonton, and Szechuan duck with walnuts. Located just north of 50th and France on the Edina-Minneapolis border, dine in or order takeout at greatwalledina.com.
Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
Hour number 2 of the show, the Matt McNeil Show, AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Good to have you with us today, Matt and Patrick here. A few weeks ago, I was going to interview my next guest, Kate Willett. She's a comedian. She was coming into town. Unfortunately, it didn't work out because of the snowstorm we had that day. Her flight got delayed, so we didn't have her on. But the more I started to look into her career and all the things she does, including a fantastic podcast, which I'm going to be a high recommend, especially for this audience, I was like, I got to get a time for her. I can get Kate on the air because, wow, she's doing a lot of really cool things. So kind enough to join us right now for a busy schedule. Kate Willett is kind enough to take some time to talk about comedy as well as her podcast. Kate, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I'm very excited to get to chat with you.
Yeah.
There's snowing in New York today, but I'm not trying to fly. So, yeah.
Well, and you are, I mean, you're very much an active comedian. You're out, you're doing shows regularly across the country all the time, right?
Yeah, that's definitely true. I've been traveling a lot recently too, which has been really fun to get to go all kinds of different places.
Let's start with the comedy. How long ago did you start doing stand-up comedy?
I think it's been about 10 years at this point. So I've been at it for a while. Yeah. I mean, hard to know how to count the pandemic time, but mostly, yeah, I guess about since like 2012 or something in there.
Well, and that's, you obviously, I think from every comedian I've ever talked to that's getting success, you have to put in the hours, you have to put in the years, you have to go do the shows. I mean, the horror stories I hear from comedians in regards to some of those first few years and going on tour and stuff like that, it's kind of one of those things, though. It builds you up and it gives you, if you can get through that, you come out as a comedian much stronger, much more honed, and frankly more appealing, I think, to an audience because you know how to deal with them.
Yeah, I definitely think so. It's definitely one of those things where you can only really learn by doing it. Like, like guitar, you can practice by yourself or something, but like comedy, you can't practice by yourself. You need the audience there. It's part of it. So definitely that's like key, is performing a lot.
You have had some great success. You're on Colbert, Netflix. You got some specials there. I believe Comedy Central as well. You've had some publicity there. Talk a little bit about that, because clearly you are making that next step, and you're fairly going to be that household name here before too much longer.
Hope so. That would be great. Yeah. Then that way I could, if I become a household name, I could force my leftist politics on so many different kinds of people. So yeah.
Well, I gotta imagine at least then you'll be able to afford rent. You're in New York City, right?
Yeah, New York is definitely an expensive city. I lived in San Francisco before then, so I'm pretty used to the expensive city thing. But it's definitely, I think the way that people live here is very different than like probably the price of a room in New York is like the price of how much some people pay for their entire 2-bedroom apartment. It's like a lot. Yeah.
Well, you go to some place like Topeka and you can get a house for your rent. It's like, really? You get the whole thing? Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you from New York originally?
No, I'm from California. I was born and grew up in the LA area, and then I moved to the Bay Area for college, and I stayed there for a while. And now I've been in New York for years, but yeah, I would say I spent the bulk of my life in California for sure.
What did you study at college, if I can ask?
I was an English major,
okay,
which doesn't really apply to anything, but it was really fun. Yeah, I went to UC Berkeley, and that was a really fun time. It was during the time that the Iraq War was starting, actually, so I got a pretty good introduction to political things, like at an early age, because I was really involved in protesting, and I met a lot of people right away that knew a lot more than me, and so that was kind of the thing that politicized me, was getting to be there at that time.
So you're an English major out of California. At what point do you say to yourself, you know what, I'm hitting the stage, I'm going to try doing this?
Well, I was doing a lot of like theater, and I just went to an open mic one night because I thought, okay, this would be a cool thing to try, another type of performance, but I just ended up liking it way more. Because I still love theater. It would be really cool to get to do a play again at some point, but I definitely like the element of like stand-up that is like writing jokes. It's really fun to get to be able to decide on what you're going to say,
Well, and you come from LA, so is this always in the back of your mind? I know a lot of people that come out of Southern California. They've got theater, they've done this thing, they've got the entertainment industry, and they end up sometimes gravitating towards that, even after they've gone down other career paths. Was that always something in your mind, or is this really just something that it just kind of developed?
If anything, I think that, actually living in LA sort of made me like resistant to that stuff. Like, I think that's probably why it took me so long, because I really wanted to do stand up when I was younger, but I just really like didn't, I was like, I did not like the whole like celebrity culture and all that stuff. And so even when I was doing theater, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do the most authentic theater in a small basement and no one's ever going to see it. And,
Yeah.
like, it was just, but then, like, I mean, like, I still don't really love like the kind of like entertainment industry culture at all, but I do like doing stand up a lot. So it's worth it,
If I can ask, if you could, you said you wouldn't mind doing theater again. If you could do one role in theater, what would be the role that you would do? Is there one on the top of your mind?
Oh, this is so dorky, but I love Shakespeare so much. So, there's definitely like a bunch, but I've always liked Winter's Tale a lot. Hermione would be really fun to play. Trying to think of like what other ones would be really cool. I mean, yeah, I mean, just like I love Shakespeare. It'd be fun to be in Macbeth. Lady Macbeth would be a really fun one. I know actually I'm not supposed to say that. The theater superstition is that you're not supposed to say Macbeth at all, but I love elevated language, and I love, like getting to do that stuff, even though it's pretty it's dorky. But I mean, I love other theater too. I definitely love contemporary theater as well.
Oh, well, I'm with you 100%. The Guthrie here in Minneapolis is going to be putting on Hamlet here before too long, and I got tickets for that. I mean, I just, you see a good it's easy to still fall in love with these classic plays because, they're classics. I mean, and so I can completely understand your attachment and your draw to those plays.
Yeah, it's kind of great. It's like, I think all the time about, like how, I mean, this is going to take a little bit of dorky tangent, but I think all the time about like how prescient Shakespeare was. Like, there's this play, like Twelfth Night.
Yeah.
That's one that a lot of people have heard of, and, probably seen the movie even in some cases. And because like the premise of the play is that there is this woman, and she's like washed away on the shore, and she ends up like dressing up as a guy and pretending to be a guy to like serve this duke for her own protection. Anyway, the duke, he is in love with this other lady, Olivia, and sends the woman Viola, who's dressed up like a guy, to go try to, get Olivia to like the duke. But Olivia ends up falling in love with the woman that's dressed up as a guy, and it's just like this thing basically that I still find so relatable, which is like when I'm dating like guys, I'm like, man, if this was like I just want them to have like a woman's soul and to have that level of emotional insight and funniness and stuff. And it's just like Shakespeare just kind of got that is like a thing that like that there is sort of a tragedy of like women loving guys that it would be so much better to just if they were like women, in some way. And it's just a funny thing how insightful he was about stuff even now,
Well, no, 100%. I mean, I think Shakespeare, if he was around today, the character would be, the boyfriend, wanting to be boyfriend would be screaming JETS, 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 jets. While the other person is like, would be there sort of like, let's sit down and talk about, where do we want to go on a hiking vacation, and where you want to go. It's not where I want to go. Where do you want to go? That sort of thing. I think that would be very relatable today. And you're exactly right. For a playwright that wrote so many years ago, his insight into the human nature still resonates like a fresh rock that hit the pond today. It is right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kate Willett's kind enough to join us right now. Now, you're of course stand-up comedy. You're getting a lot of success there. I want everyone who's listening to me right now, you need to go find this podcast, Reply Guys, because you made a decision. You decided to do a podcast where you are on the very progressive side of things here, and you do not shy away from the issues.
Oh yeah, it's definitely like a socialist podcast, and but we have we have all different types of people on, but usually like we focus on like socialist and progressive issues, like for example, like everyone being able to have housing or universal health care, or we've been doing some episodes recently on police defunding and abolition and stuff. And it's like, I think for listeners that, there's probably people that listen to the show that don't, agree with like every single thing, but the guests we have on are always extremely well informed and can give, an insight into the topics that we discuss that are not, necessarily available, like, on, Pod Save America or MSNBC and stuff. So, I'm glad that we can like, particularly have like activists and, people who are just not necessarily going to be interviewed on, regular, media. So that's a really rewarding part of it for me.
One of the things I like about your podcast is how you like I said, you are out there on the far left. You basically don't shy away from that, but what you do is you present the argument in such a, an understandable way, whether it's, issues of food, medicine, shelter, whatever the case may be, and you see it. You're in New York, San Francisco, two of the largest cities in the country. This is becoming more and more of an urban country. These are issues which, that are going to need to be addressed and need to be talked about. But I think you said it, is that there's a lot of people that will shy away from these topics because, oh, well, that just sounds like, socialism, oh, Bernie Sanders, whatever the case may be. The reality is that these are issues where we are, as a society, are failing our citizens because we are not looking at people, how we can make the world better on such a base level of food, shelter, water, healthcare. And I think that is, I really do appreciate that, because I think you guys convey these issues with good broad appeal.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really important to me always to be, accessible. And, I think that there definitely around, 2016, 2015, 2017, like there, were a lot of like leftist media started emerging, and like where our show, like where I really wanted to go with it was just like, having it be for people that are, people can enjoy it at any sort of experience or exposure level to these topics at all. Like it's not like it's not something that you have to like have a lot of information coming in or anything like that. It can be, maybe like the first kind of leftist perspective you've heard on that topic, and like people aren't going to use like jargon and it's just like talking about it like just in a way that everyone can understand. And we do try to, I think, have a lot of women on the show, a lot of people of color on the show, and just make sure that there are like just that it's a chance to hear some perspectives that are often, I think, sidelined even from leftist media, not on purpose maybe, but just it's like this thing where it just sometimes you just look at who gets on a show or is like talking in the media, and it just ends up being like a overrepresentation of white dudes, even if no one's doing that on purpose,
Well, no, I'm going to say guilty as charged, because I do a progressive. I'm on the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. I am definitely a on the left side of things. But the reality is I know there are some times where I'll shy away from an issue because I don't know if I can convey it correctly. You show me with your podcast that no, you can. And as a big white guy, yeah, that's also, I try to be understanding the my position, and the fact that I need to make sure the other voices are heard. I think that's so important. One of the things too, it's not like you need to. New York is such a melting pot of topics you can talk about there. But I imagine with your career, you're flying around Minneapolis. You can come here and learn about bad policing, for God's sakes. You can go to
absolutely.
You can go to say Denver or Austin or or Detroit. And I imagine when you get into those cities that it gives you an interesting perspective, because there might be an issue that you find there that, okay, this isn't getting covered here, but this is a good one to bring up on the podcast.
Yeah, one of the things that really, I definitely, in traveling around the country, have gotten, I think I've been fortunate to get to hear, a lot of like perspectives from people that, I'll give you a concrete example. Like, I think when Donald Trump got elected, obviously I hate him and stuff. Hopefully that's okay to say on the podcast. But,
knock yourself out, yeah.
But people were like, I think, talking about these states that voted for him, and, like just talking about like the people who lived there, like they were all just really conservative. And I've gotten to go to a lot of those states, and, there are a huge number of like young leftists and progressives and people who really do not like what's happening at all, and like it's just not a monolith in any of those places. Like there are, people who are really, organizing, fighting back. And, sometimes the way, unfortunately, that it works out with votes, especially with like gerrymandering, is that the conservative side of stuff wins out like in the polls in the end. But like, I've met some really great lefties in Texas, and unfortunately, like when it comes to things like reproductive health, like the people in those states that did not vote for those policies, like, they're suffering from that. And I think it's like, we really need to stand in solidarity with them. And, that's sometimes when I see people say like, when something bad happens in Texas, everyone goes online and it's like, well, you voted for this. It's like, well, a lot of people didn't, well, a lot of people didn't. So yeah, that's, I think, the main thing that I've gotten out of traveling for sure.
Reply Guys is the podcast. It's pretty much available everywhere, right?
Yeah, all podcast platforms.
I will also mention your Audible original, Dirtbag Anthropology, that you've got
Thank
out
you.
there. You're nicely done on that as well. People can find that. I'll put a link out for that a little bit later on afterwards. I do also want to advise people to follow you on Twitter. I was enjoying today your no holds barred, incredibly correct evaluation of the way that Silicon Valley and the tech sector works today. Is that if you have this idea that it's still like these 1980s leftist tech people, it's not. It's basically this far right, capitalist, corporatist, extremism that basically has gotten very good at selling their ideas like they're liberal, but they're really not. I will encourage people to follow you on Twitter as well, because I think you got some great insight there.
I think thank you so much. Yeah, living in the Bay Area for a long time, I definitely feel strongly about the tech stuff. It it affected me, affected my friends, and a lot of these like venture capitalist weirdos are actually funding pretty far right stuff in San Francisco. Like PAC, like the recall of Chesa Boudin, so that these people could bring back cash bail and bully unhoused people and stuff. And I think it is really important for people to know what's happening there, because when we think about what's right wing, a lot of time we think about Ron DeSantis, but some of these like libertarian tech type people have really put a new spin on it that makes it much harder for liberals to recognize for what it is. I think
exactly. It's the stuff that's going on in the shadows, which is really kind of scary. Kate Willett is on in Twitter. It's KateWillett. I'll link to that as well a little bit later on. You're not in Minneapolis anytime soon. Where are you going to be at on the road here for your comedy?
Well, okay, on April 1st, I am going to be at Fairfield Comedy Club, and then in April, I'll be at the Moon Tower Comedy Festival in Austin. And then I have a bunch of other stuff coming up. I'll be, all throughout, just really all around the country over the next few months. So definitely follow me on Twitter or on Instagram at kate.willett. I do a lot of promotion of my shows on Instagram. So, yeah, follow me there.
All right. I'll link to everything a little bit later on. You come back to Minneapolis, you're more than welcome anytime to come on my show. It's been an absolute privilege chatting with you, Kate.
Thank you so much, you too, Matt. I really appreciate it. And have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. Kate Willett, kind enough to join us. I'll link, like I said, I'll link to everything a little bit later on, including Reply Guys, that great podcast. You should be following that and listening to that. Let's take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950.
Winter is here, and there's a good chance your home isn't being heated efficiently. And it's likely because of air sealing and insulation problems. Inadequate attic insulation is the leading contributor to high energy bills, cold rooms, and ice dams. Great news, the energy-efficient pros at Snap Construction can fix it all. Stop the heat from leaking out and save. Call 612-333-SNAP or visit snapconstruction.com for your free infrared energy inspection. Install with Snap Construction and qualify for over $750 in rebates and incentives. State and city programs are now offering 0% financing for qualifying insulation upgrades. So call Snap Construction for your free insulation energy consultation and start saving on your energy bills. Call 612-333-SNAP. That's 612-333-SNAP. Or visit snapconstruction.com. Snap Construction is arguably the most well-reviewed insulation and exterior contractor in the metro area. Visit snapconstruction.com.
Located just north of 50th in France, the Great Wall Restaurant has provided a delicious taste of authentic Chinese cuisine since 1981. Specializing in Szechuan and Peking dishes, they offer one of the most extensive menus in the Twin Cities. Favorites include hot and sour soup, pan-fried dumplings, and mushu pork with homemade Chinese pancakes. Stop by their Edina location or call for takeout at 952-927-4439. See the full menu at greatwallrestaurant.us.
We're facing into some of the greatest challenges the world has faced in decades. How do we address this great transformation in how we deal with land, how we engage with people, how we produce enough food but produce it just and regeneratively? And how do we do that at a time of social, economic, and climatic emergency?
Attend the Regenerative Agriculture and Food Systems Summit in Chicago on March 28th and 29th. This summit brings together farmers, food and beverage brands, and stakeholders with one unified mission: to accelerate the transition to regenerative agriculture. Together, we can build a more abundant and resilient food system for generations to come. For more information, go to Regenerative Agriculture Summit USA. Enter the code FoodFreedom10 for a 10% discount. That's 10% off with Food Freedom 10.
Kate Willett's pretty awesome. She is pretty awesome. I'm actually kind of like, oh, I can't believe that was a pretty good guess, man. That was a pretty good get. She will be, I'd say, just everything I've seen about her career right now and her trajectory. It's 3 years before she's, I think going to be that household name. And that podcast she does, Reply Guys, is really good. If you like lefty stuff, you want to go pay attention to that. That's a good listen. I get her point about the fact that everywhere you go, there are progressives, there are liberals, there's Democratic socialists everywhere you go. I have zero doubt about that. One of the problems is that I think a lot of them, because they've already feel like they're going to lose. They basically they're not showing up as much, and so I do find that to be somewhat frustrating. In the case, I mean, I'll look to Wisconsin right now. They got that Supreme Court race over there. There is no reason. That is a state that I still think at the heart of it has more Democrats than Republicans. It does. If you don't win that Supreme Court race, the lunacy of the far right in Wisconsin will stay in charge for another decade. You want to start turning things around in Wisconsin, you have got to win that race. And it will tell me a lot about, and like I said, at the end of the day, I think there's still far more Democrats in Wisconsin than Republicans. I do. I honestly think that. So the question comes down to, will they turn up? And I think that's when I'm talking to Kate, I think that's the question I have to ask is, will they turn up? And I think that if people turn up and understand these issues, and that's one of the reasons I like her podcast, is it takes a very leftist, idea or concept or topic, and makes it very relatable for most people out there. I mean, it really is good. I was listening to their latest, and they're talking about how they want to change the zoning laws to prevent from having to have a window in a bedroom on an apartment. And the one of the things they bring up is like, well, that's for fire safety reasons, for goodness sakes. But yet in New York City, they want to basically just jam you in the middle of a room and give you any natural light whatsoever. I guess when you go to the Duluth Mall now, lots of natural light in there. 952-946-6205. Patrick, are we ready for our interview here? Yeah. Okay, so jam-packed hour today. Our usual Tuesday guest, kind enough to wait a little bit here this afternoon. Brett is here with Patrick Cooligan from the Minnesota Reformer. They're going to touch on the story that I touched on. I talked about for a half hour earlier, which is this police debacle. They'll touch on that, as well as also going to talk about the week ahead in the legislature. That's right here. Patrick Cooligan from the Minnesota Reformer, right here on AM 950.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Brett Johnson with you here on a Tuesday afternoon. And we're joined by Patrick Cooligan, who is the editor-in-chief of the Minnesota Reformer. Great resource for the latest in Minnesota news and politics over at minnesotareformer.com. As today we are going to be talking about disciplinary actions or lack thereof with the Minneapolis Police Department that has to do with misconduct. It's a story we have talked about more than one occasion here on the show, and we'll be covering that again. We'll also be talking about some of the latest bills at the state legislature that you should be paying attention to. So, Patrick, thanks so much for coming back on the show today.
Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. So let's start off talking about Dina Winter's article titled, "Woman Says Minneapolis Police Department Officer Told Her Black Lives Matter is a Terrorist Organization." So this has to do with a citizen of Minneapolis, Jacqueline Billick, and a Minneapolis police officer she talked to by the name of Sergeant Scott Kaiser. So, Patrick, what prompted Billick to contact the Minneapolis Police Department regarding a man, putting flyers on windshields condemning Black Lives Matter back in 2020 after the George Floyd protests? And what happened when she called the 5th Precinct Police Station and talked to Sergeant Scott Kaiser when she was sharing her concerns?
Yeah, so she's a woman in her 70s, not some young activist prone to make up stories. At least that was our impression, and she was concerned about this person in the neighborhood who maybe was dealing with some mental illness or something, who was putting these flyers on everybody's cars saying that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization. It seemed like maybe the person was actually maybe unwell. And if you remember the time after this is not long after George Floyd's murder, so everybody's a little on edge. So she's calling. She lives by herself. Again, she's a woman in her 70s. She's saying, "Well, yeah, I just want to check on this person to see if he's perhaps dangerous," because she'd heard around the neighborhood that maybe this person was going through some mental health problems. So the officer, he's a sergeant by the name of Scott Kaiser. He answers and he says, "Well, speaking of Black Lives Matter, yes, they are a terrorist group." And the quote that she gave us that was from from Sergeant Kaiser was, "We will wipe them off the face of the earth." And she was obviously taken aback by this, that a police officer would say that. And he said, "Excuse me," and he repeated himself. She asked to speak to a supervisor. He laughed at her. And then, in an act of what she thought was arrogance, it sounds like arrogance, he said, "You know what? Here's my last name, and you can have my badge number because you're probably going to file a complaint." And then she dealt with this. She called back a couple more times. He kept answering, and he wouldn't transfer the call to his supervisor. So she did file a complaint, and then that's where the machinery of the Minneapolis Police Department's disciplinary process takes over. And you might be unsurprised to learn that really didn't offer much solace to her either. So now you have this woman calling for help, and this officer essentially just laughs in her face and agrees with the idea that the Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization and says we're going to wipe them off the face of the earth. And so now she then proceeds to report him. And the first thing is delay. It's months and months before she's actually interviewed about the incident. And then she have this crazy thing where she goes there for the interview. She goes to I believe it was she was at City Hall. And as it happens, it's the day of the verdict in the Chauvin case. She's being interviewed, and the person interviewing her says, well, you should do is you should go out and talk to the national press about this because they're all there for the Chauvin verdict. Which I don't know, I suppose is a decent idea, but it doesn't give you much confidence in the Minneapolis Police Department's disciplinary process where the person interviewing the person making a complaint says, well, they have so little confidence in that there's going to be any kind of disciplinary outcome here that they say you should just go to the press. So the process goes on, and we don't know exactly what happened here. There's no record that he was ever disciplined for this behavior, which at the very least was incredibly rude to an elderly woman who lives in the city that you're supposed to be protecting and serving. But really, it really goes further than that because he's denigrating a whole portion of the population here when he says that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization. So there was long delay. As far as we know, he was not disciplined in this incident. And then I've been going on here a long time. I realize, so I'll let you go with any questions you have. But it's just kind of a remarkable thing where a citizen calls the department. This guy says this officer says some really inappropriate things, and seems to act with total impunity, like he knows nothing's going to happen to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were talking about how some of the investigators were recommending, well, maybe you should take this story national and try to get press attention. Or we also had one of the investigators, I believe, Nick Barkley, also sharing her frustration in this case. So certainly it was very frustrating for her. And even to the idea, well, you need to share the story with more media outlets. Well, as the article states, well, none of the other outlets really responded to her requests to talk about this case, well, except for you guys over at the Minnesota Reformer. So what exactly is the disciplinary procedure in Minneapolis? How does the process work for filing a complaint against a Minneapolis police officer? Because as we've talked about numerous times, there's certainly many issues with that. But in case anyone who is maybe unfamiliar with this, how is this process supposed to work? And then what typically actually happens when you file a complaint against an officer in Minneapolis?
Yeah, well, filing a complaint isn't that difficult. You can go to the website and find a place to do it. You can go to a precinct and do it. You can probably do it through your city council member. But the biggest problem is that too often, from what we can tell, the complaint, first of all, there's a long delay. It takes them forever to come to some sort of a decision on what they're going to do. And then very often what they do is they recommend, instead of an actual sanction, a discipline, they recommend what's called coaching. And this is, they would essentially coach you on how to be a better officer and not to repeat the mistake that you made that led you to this place. Now we can argue about whether that's too lenient, because in a coaching situation, you're not losing any pay and there's not really much of a discipline. But most importantly, when the department conducts what it calls coaching, that is not considered an act of discipline, and therefore it is not. There's no public record of it. So we have all this, an incident like this. We don't know for sure, again, because there's no public record of it. But we have a pretty good sense that there was coaching. Was probably the outcome in this case, and there's no record of that. So we do have records of discipline that was meted out to this officer, and they as it happens, and not surprisingly, they seem to be the same kind of thing. He seems to have a kind of arrogant, nonchalant attitude toward the people he's supposed to be, and totally disrespectful attitude toward the people he's supposed to be serving and protecting. But how many times has he been, instead of being disciplined, has he been coached? Well, we don't know because there's no public record of that. So there is ongoing litigation about that issue and about getting those instances of coaching made public, so we have a better idea of what's happening inside Minneapolis Police Department.
Absolutely. And you guys, of course, have been covering this for a while. Many instances where so-called coaching or a lack of discipline at the Minneapolis Police Department has led to numerous problems, and this just the latest one. So good on you guys for covering that. And you can find more on this over at minnesotareformer.com, minnesotareformer.com. Make sure you check out Dina's piece titled, "A Woman Says MPD Officer Told Her Black Lives Matter is a Terrorist Organization." I want to move on now to some news over at the state legislature, because right now lawmakers at the legislature are considering repealing a law that caps city and county employees' pay at nearly $207,000 this year. Law limits local government employees' total compensation to an amount tied to the governor's salary, though exceptions are made for school employees, certain medical workers, and elected officials. So I found this interesting, Patrick, because obviously right now we are in an era of inflation, and it's a very hot market in terms of people looking for jobs right now. So talk about how this cap has impacted the ability of local government employers rather, to attract qualified candidates, because if you can't pay a market wage, I imagine it's got to be hard to hire qualified people for some of these positions.
Yeah, apparently we're, according to the League of Minnesota Cities, Minnesota is the only state with a cap like this that's tied to the governor's salary, and that makes it pretty difficult because the governor, it's just politically unpalatable to give the governor frequent raises, and so that just makes it difficult for local governments to hire in a competitive environment like this one, and an inflationary environment, as you noted. I think it's not surprising that the two the member of the House and the Senate who offered this legislation come from the western suburbs, because there's certainly a higher cost of living, especially on the housing front. And so I think local governments all over the state, but especially in the western suburbs, really would like to get rid of this cap and make it easier for them to recruit candidates without having to go and get a waiver from the state.
Yeah, it's something you don't often think about when it comes to employees of government agencies. But yeah, in order to remain competitive, you do sometimes need to, pay a competitive wage. And as you alluded to, in the western suburbs especially, that can be especially difficult to try to get those qualified employees. So we'll have to see how this bill ends up advancing through the House and the Senate. Final question for you, Patrick. What else are you watching this week at the state legislature? Any big bills we should be keeping an eye on, or budget items? Talk about that a little bit.
So today the Senate is taking up a bill that would provide lunch to all students, breakfast and lunch to all students, and it's already passed the House, so that should be on its way to the governor, and so that's really going to transform the school day for plenty of students and their families. I think that aside from that, there's wage theft in the construction industry is getting a close look this week. Payday lending, a cap on interest. But I think what we've entered into a period during the session now where it's getting down to Democrats who control both chambers and the governor's office. They start to need to make decisions, especially on the $17.5 billion surplus, and it turns out it can be actually difficult to sort out who gets what, and so I think that's what we're into that period of some pretty serious behind the scenes debate going on. I also think that the marijuana legalization legislation, which has been through a bunch of committees, I think is also getting a closer look. And I think that there's apparently a big amendment coming on that. It's going to change that bill. I think there's some trepidation around that issue, and I'm afraid they don't have the votes in the Senate locked down at the moment. So I think after that, really that sprint out of the gate, which I think they were smart to do, and getting a lot done and points on the board. I do think that we're about to enter a slower period when they just have to work out amongst themselves. They just have to figure out who's going to get what. So that we're talking about, is it going to be a major child care program, or is it going to be a free college tuition, or is it, how big is the housing package going to be? Is there going to be a cut in state tax on Social Security benefits? Is there going to be some kind of a tax rebates like a Walsh check? So these are all questions that are unanswered, and until they answer them, they're kind of they're stuck in decision-making mode.
Well, the DFL does have a little bit more wiggle room in the House with their majority of, I believe, 6 seats. But of course, in the Senate, that is only a 1-seat majority. And talking about some of the issues that the legislature is working on, are there some issues that are giving the DFLers in the Senate more problems in terms of trying to stay united? Or talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think gun control. There's 4 bills kind of in play, and I think that they're going to have real trouble there because you mentioned that 1-seat majority, and you've got some borderline swing districts there, and especially in Greater Minnesota, where there are a couple new members have said they're not fully on board at this point. The Social Security, the cut on state tax of Social Security benefits is another hard issue because you have Democratic members who ran on that issue in St. Cloud and in Hermantown. Grant Hochschild certainly was a strong proponent of that issue. But then you've got progressives who don't like the long-term fiscal impact of that tax cut, and they also think that it's weighted too heavily toward the wealthy. So that's another issue. And then again, I think that marijuana legalization is going to happen. I don't know that it's going to happen this year, and I do think the stumbling block at this point is in the Senate.
Well, you can follow along with what's happening at the state legislature over at MinnesotaReformer.com. MinnesotaReformer.com, as we have been speaking with Patrick Houlihan, who is the editor-in-chief of the Minnesota Reformer. Patrick, as always, thanks for coming on the show today.
Always a pleasure.
All right, let's take a break, and then we'll send things back over to Matt McNeil on AM 950.
Hey, it's Tom letting you know that affordable energy storage has arrived with a solar battery from All Energy Solar. A solar battery works by storing excess electricity generated by your solar panels. You can then use that energy later. That means you won't have to use fossil fuel energy during evenings, cloudy days, or even power outages. All Energy Solar offers both customized residential and commercial solar battery storage solutions that enable you to capture the free, abundant power of the sun. Installing residential or commercial solar batteries from All Energy Solar is easy. They'll take care of everything from system design and permitting to installation, financing, and customer service. And best of all, the Inflation Reduction Act included an extension and increase to the federal solar tax credit. That tax credit will also apply to your battery backup, saving you even more money. So store your solar energy and cut out the fossil fuel companies with All Energy Solar. Call 800-620-3370 or visit allenergysolar.com.
The Electric Fetus is having a pre-inventory store-wide sale now through March 19. Take 20% off almost everything in the store: new and used vinyl, CDs and DVDs, Electric Fetus t-shirts, hoodies, and pint glasses, and tons of other great gift ideas. The store is open 10 to 6 Tuesday through Saturday and 11 to 6 on Sunday. Electric Fetus is located just south of downtown Minneapolis at 2000 South 4th Avenue. More info at electricfetus.com. Sale ends Sunday.
Eat Local Minnesota is a great way to find locally owned Minnesota restaurants and food purveyors. You'll find high-quality food and unique eating experiences with dishes from around the world. Just visit eatlocalminnesota.com for your next meal. Come visit the award-winning Hazel's Northeast in Minneapolis for breakfast, lunch, dinner, or weekend brunch. For breakfast, try the slow-cooked brisket hash, hippie cakes, and meat waffle. While for lunch, enjoy favorites like the buttermilk fried chicken sandwich or veggie burger. Hazel's is open Tuesdays through Saturdays, 8 to 8, with a Sunday brunch from 8 to 2. Located off 29th and Johnson in Northeast Minneapolis. More at hazelsne2go.com. If you're craving barbecue, then don't drive too fast or you will miss Scott Jamama's Hot Barbecue, located at 3 West Diamond Lake Road in Minneapolis. Scott Jamama's offers mouth-watering baby back ribs, grilled chicken, and half-pound pulled pork sandwiches. The potato salad, spicy baked beans, and twice-baked potatoes should not be missed. More details at scottjamamas.com.
Hey, it's Patrick. Improve your air quality and health because Zero Res is the only choice for a true clean that lasts longer. 1 in 5 Americans suffer from poor air quality in their home and or their office. HVAC systems carry harmful particulates and promote asthma, hay fever, and allergy symptoms. A clean HVAC system promotes a healthier indoor environment, which contributes to productivity, comfort, and a sense of health and well-being. Zero Res uses the most technologically advanced duct cleaning process available. The best part? We can install an air purification and filtration system on the same day. Instead of letting these pollutants linger, get your air duct Zero Resified. This month, get 3 rooms Zero Resified from the Twin Cities' #1 carpet cleaner starting at just $129 and take $75 off your air duct cleaning. Call Zero Res right now, 952-ZERO-RES, or go to ZeroResMinnesota.com and ask for the AM 950 special. Zero Res.
Do you have a car you no longer need but don't want to jump through all the hoops to sell yourself? Rudy Luther Toyota can help with their We Buy program. It's really simple. Go to rudyluthertoyota.com, click on the We Buy link, type in some basic information, and Rudy Luther will get you an instant and accurate offer. Then set an appointment, and after a quick verification of the vehicle, Rudy Luther will set you up with your payment with a check on the spot in most cases. We Buy, it's that simple. For more details or to sell your vehicle, head to rudyluthertoyota.com. That's rudyluthertoyota.com.
End-of-life decisions are not easy to make. Hi, I'm Mary T. of Mary T. Hospice Care. It's important to make sure that this difficult time is meaningful and comforting to you and your loved ones. Our hospice team provides an individualized program of physical, emotional, spiritual, and practical care so your loved one is comfortable and not in pain. At Mary T. Hospice, we understand that choosing the right hospice care provider can be overwhelming, but we're here to assist you. Learn more today at marytinc.com.
Hey, John, I heard you're turning 65 this year. Time to start comparing your Medicare insurance options.
I'm so overwhelmed with all the different Medicare companies and plan designs. I don't even know where to begin.
Really? I worked with CompareYourMedicare.com, and they made my Medicare decisions seem easy.
Oh, really? Well, what do they do?
CompareYourMedicare.com represents several of the top Medicare insurance companies in Minnesota. A local licensed agent will help you compare Medicare plans to determine which products best meet your needs and budget.
Hi, this is Jared with CompareYourMedicare.com. We're a local small business that prides itself in helping our community with their Medicare needs. Medicare is complex, but it doesn't have to be. Whether you're planning to retire early or work past Medicare eligibility at age 65, give us a call. We can guide you through how and when to apply for Medicare. Go to CompareYourMedicare.com or call 952-465-0074 to schedule a consultation. CompareYourMedicare.com is part of the Minnesota Health Insurance Network of Agents.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. What an hour, man. Nice hour indeed. Kate Willett and Patrick Cooligan. This bill passed this afternoon. Minnesota schools are poised to offer free lunches and breakfast to all students under a bill passed by the state Senate on Tuesday. The Senate approved the free school bills meal on a bipartisan 38-26 vote. Heads back to the House, where they did amend the language, so it has to be reapproved there, but probably should be an easy layup. And will be, quickly signed into law by Governor Walz there. I will say, I'm going to play something for you. I want to give you a preface here. I'm going to play something for you in a second. I want you to get your outrage meter ready, because no matter how upset you think you're going to be about this, it's going to be worse. It's from Druskowski. But I'm going to go back to the story here because I should mention that, Abler and who was the other guy that voted for this? Duckworth, two of the GOPers that voted for this bill, because there is need out there. There are hungry people out there that do not get food. They do not. And so and if you are a Christian, and I know there's a lot of Republicans who claim to be Christian, you should be trying to feed hungry kids, because that is a basic layup. You suck at being Christian if you do not try to sponsor a bill to try to feed food to hungry kids. Which, when I say suck, I mean Steve Drazkowski, the Republican from Mazeppa, who in the story, this is how the Star Tribune labels him. He said the money should instead be invested in efforts to improve reading, math, and science proficiency. No. That's not what he said. Patrick, if you have a quick moment, let's play Steve Drazkowski talking about giving hungry kids a free lunch and a free breakfast.
Mr. President, I have yet to meet a person in Minnesota that is hungry. Yet today, I have yet to meet a person in Minnesota that says they don't have access to enough food to eat. Now, I should say that hunger is a relative term, Mr. President. I had a cereal bar for breakfast. I guess I'm hungry now. Wow. That, to some, might be maybe that's the definition of the bill. I don't know. I didn't see a definition of hunger in the bill, Mr. President. But I think most reasonable people suggest hunger means you don't have enough to eat in order to provide for metabolism and growth.
Unbelievable. He is now. First of all, I want everyone to stop for a second and realize, in Steve Drazkowski's district, there are people who are hungry and do not have food. There's food insecurity in his district. And this is how he talks about his own people that he is there to represent. Oh, stop whining. Yeah, I had a breakfast bar. I'm a little hungry now. I guess that's what we're talking about. This is a man who claims he's a Christian. He sucks at being Christian. Well, he sucks at being human. Drazkowski is a walking sewer. I mean, he is just a disgusting individual. And I know he probably is getting his own little jollies hearing me describe him like this. But dude, you are truly a horrible human being. And no church should allow you in there, because you are really that horrible. You godforsaken piece of crap. And I'll say it to your damn face, you jackass. I will. We're back tomorrow. Tellin', see ya.
The electric fetus is having a pre-inventory store-wide